It's been very busy the last couple weeks on the homestead. After several weeks of rain this summer, the weeds in my garden began to take over, spreading like wildfire. I knew it was something I needed to take care of before things got completely out of control. Three years ago, when we moved onto this land, I got right to work building the foundation of my garden. I wanted to build a no-dig permaculture food forest, so I started to lay down cardboard and then layers upon layers of wood chips.
Doing a lot of this work most of this morning, all week. My body is feeling it, but it's a great kind of burn because I'm so excited and I've been waiting for this, and that's what keeps driving me to do this work. It's all going to be worth it. And this is the kind of effort we want and need to put in order to have the amazing amounts of food and beauty that we want to create here on our property. Working on this food forest that I'm starting to build, and you can see behind me, this is the mulch I've been laying down. I have a lot of area to cover, as you can see. So I'm working hard this whole entire week, but it's coming along and it's getting there.
What that would do over time is break down and bring microbes and fungi into the soil beneath it. Once I was ready to start building out my garden beds using fresh compost, it would create rich, healthy soil organically. The only thing is that over time, the wood chips did break down, but invasive grasses and weeds began to grow through the mulch layers, consuming everything. Last year, I noticed this was beginning to happen. So first thing this spring, I began to make some calls to local arborists to find more wood chips. But none of them had any. So I got down on my hands and knees and began to pull weeds one by one. As the season went on, my garden was in great shape. Everything was growing and the weeds appeared to be tamed. We had over a month of dry weather in late spring, followed by weeks of heavy rain, and that's when the weeds began to take over. Recently, I had a visitor stop by, a new friend who's a botanist and permaculture wizard. He brought me some new plants for my garden and noticed the invasive weeds that were taking over. He suggested I address it right away before it gets any worse. The energy that the garden was spending keeping the weeds alive and vigorous was detracting from the amount of energy that should be going to the food I was growing. So I knew it was time to make it a priority. The plan was to first start pulling as many weeds as possible, including the poison ivy that had been spreading throughout my garden. This took several days to do, and after getting a bad case of poison ivy last year, I didn't want to take the chance of getting it again. So I covered myself from head to toe before even attempting to pull it. Many people had suggested that I use chemicals, such as Roundup, on the poison ivy. But I always believe there is another way. Roundup and chemicals like it contain harmful glyphosate that wreaks havoc on the soil and our bodies. It's highly toxic, so definitely not something I want to put onto the earth or in my garden. So I learned about other ways to get rid of poison ivy, such as using vinegar, pulling it from the root, or using goats. Goats love eating poison ivy, and while it definitely is a reason why I got our goats, letting them loose in my garden would mean them not only eating poison ivy, but everything else too, which I did not want. So I made several calls to local landscapers looking for professionals who could pull the poison ivy for me. Again, after last year, I did not want to go near it, but I got no response from any of the landscapers I reached out to until I stumbled on a high school boy who was trying to earn some money over the summer by doing landscaping services. He said he'd do it, but then backed out last minute because school was starting. He said he'd do it, but then backed out last minute because school was starting. So that left me no choice but to do it myself. My husband and I armored up, put on face masks, and got right to work. Once we were done, we could then go through with a torch and burn the remaining weeds. We had to be careful though, because if there was any poison ivy that we had missed, it's highly toxic when it's burned. So we had to completely cover up again, wear masks and eye protection while we did this. It was insanely hot and humid, so we were completely dying and ready to strip everything off and jump into a cold shower as soon as we were done. In the meantime, I had made another call to a local arborist about wood chips. I also had him come out and look at 2 of my trees that were dead and would need to be taken down. He took a look at my garden and what we were building here. He offered to deliver me a load of wood chips, but for a cost. The first year I built my garden, I got 3 loads of wood chips for free. So paying money for them this year was a bit of a surprise, but I needed them, so I paid the man and got the chips the very next day. I was so excited. I couldn't wait to get out there and start laying down a fresh layer of wood chips.
So it was about 3 years ago that I first laid down the wood chip foundation for this garden. And ideally, you should reapply fresh layers about every other year. So it was definitely due for it because, as you can see, there was a ton of weeds growing through the mulch bed, the mulch floor. So I tried early this spring to get another large load of wood chips delivered and was struggling trying to find any from some of the local arborists. I called about 5 different places and no one had any available for me. And so fortunately I was able to finally get a load. And so now that's what I'm doing, is laying down the much needed fresh layer of wood chips over this floor bed because the weeds were really getting out of control. So hopefully this will help take care of that.
It took me nearly a week to finish this big job. There's a lot of area to cover, and it required some careful navigation with my barrel to avoid hitting any plants, shrubs, or trees. My husband gave me a hand the last 2 days, especially since the high school landscaper fell through. I was so relieved to get the help because my body was exhausted and so sore. With most of it already done, we had already gone through the first load of wood chips, but we still had some area to cover. Amazingly, I got a call from another local arborist that I had reached out to early that spring, who told me that they had a load of wood chips they could deliver that same day. I graciously accepted, and it was more than enough to finish the job, and they were free. The garden is now completely transformed. When my new friend, the botanist, brought me plants for my garden, he included several gooseberry plants and blackcap raspberries. I had been waiting to get these weeds under control and fresh wood chips laid down before I decided where I'd plant these, so now I could finally find them a new home in my food forest.
Well, it was in my childhood days, oh Lord, many long years ago. Now with the Spirit, now of my Savior, I was filled, Lord, filled, oh, in that old fascinating, oh Lord, our memories, they linger still in that little, oh, that wooden church house out on a hill. You know, every Sunday morning, help me hang the family prayer, then to that old country wagon, oh, would feel, oh, Lord, oh, would feel, well, we out on our journey, moving over rocks, God knows it.
There's never a dull moment when you take the big step in building a homestead. It's a journey into many unknowns, discovering new things and taking on new challenges.
And they're off.
And while the process can feel frustrating at times, it's a beautiful feeling when you overcome something that felt so big or too hard to handle. It's in those moments that you discover more about yourself as well, that you can do more than you ever thought was possible. It's hard to believe that summer is almost over. Fall will be here soon, and I can already feel the change begin to happen. We had a big rainstorm come through that cooled everything off. It felt like a cool fall day, especially in the morning. It made me excited for what's to come. I absolutely love fall, a season between the two extremes, summer and winter, hot and cold. There's something magical that happens in the in-between, the moment just before you fall asleep, or when the sun begins to set, turning from day to night. It's a time of transition. As one season ends and another begins, may we all feel the shift within our hearts and souls and lean into each other for comfort and support as we watch the world change around us.